Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Ghost Stories from the World with Omen. Now, we're still in Indonesia. We've still got one more stop after this one, folks. Today, we're going to be talking about the Pocong. That's right, the Pocong. I've done a little research here, so I'm going to read what they say the Pocong is, and then we're going to dive right into the story of it. In many Muslim communities, people are buried straight into the ground, wrapped in a white cloth, tied at their heads and feet. The ritual is that after 40 days, these ties are loosened and the soul is then free. But if not, the soul remains trapped. If this happens, the body rises out of its grave to tell people it needs a release. As it is wrapped in cloth, the Pocong must hop around. And they have this really eerie picture of it. It looks like somebody wrapped in a white burlap sack with just the head open and everything else tied up. I guess that makes sense, right? I can understand why that would happen. Now, we're going to go on to our second part here, which gives you a little more in-depth on the Pocong. Pocong is a ghost from Javanese folklore that is said to be the soul of a dead person trapped in their shroud. The shroud, known as kain kafan, is a prescribed length of cloth used in Muslim burials to wrap the body of the deceased. The dead body is covered in white fabric and tied over the head, under the feet, and on the neck. The word Pocong itself means wrapped in a shroud. The ghost is often depicted as a figure draped in white cloth with only the eyes visible through the fabric. According to legend, the Pocong is known for haunting graveyards and is said to be a vengeful spirit, seeking revenge on those who wronged them in life. Despite its terrifying reputation, the Pocong has become a popular cultural icon in Indonesia, appearing in films, television shows, and even as a Halloween costume. While some may dismiss it as a mere superstition, the Pocong remains an enduring part of Indonesian folklore and a reminder of the country's rich cultural heritage. A Pocong is a well-known ghost in Indonesian and Malay culture. It is believed that when a person dies, their soul will leave the body and move on to the afterlife. However, if the body is not buried properly, the soul will remain trapped in the body and the body will become a Pocong. The Pocong is wrapped in a white shroud and its feet are tied together. It is said that the Pocong moves by hopping, and it is often associated with cemeteries and graveyards. The origin of the Pocong can be traced back to ancient Indonesian mythology. According to legend, the Pocong is the spirit of a person who died a violent death or was buried improperly. The Pocong is said to be a restless spirit that cannot find peace in the afterlife. Its white shroud is believed to represent the shroud that is used to wrap the body during burial. The tying of the feet is said to prevent the spirit from wandering too far from its resting place. In conclusion, the Pocong is a fascinating and spooking ghost that has captured the imagination of people in Indonesia and Malaysia for generations. Its cultural significance and mythological roots make it an important part of the region's folklore. Now, let us move on to the last tidbit that I found, and then I'll tell you what I found. In some parts of Indonesia, there are Pocong variants that are unique to the places from which they emerged. One of such creatures is known as the plastic Pocong that haunts the city of Jakarta. The plastic Pocong's origin is traced to the purportedly true story of a pregnant woman who was murdered in cold blood by her boyfriend. When an autopsy was performed on the murdered woman's body, blood kept flowing endlessly from her body, even after it was sewn shut. So much blood was pouring out that the hospital staffs were compelled to wrap the corpse in plastic in addition to the traditional shroud before burying her remains in an undisclosed location. People believe the plastic Pocong appeared because the murdered woman's soul wished to be freed from her plastic cover. Now, let us delve in to the story of the plastic Pocong. Now, you all know, I like to find out more about these Pocongs. Obviously, there's more than one of them. And this one, the plastic lady, I wanted to find out because they say they hop around. So I'm assuming, right? If you're hopping in cloth, probably not going to hear you. But if you're hopping in cloth and plastic, I'm going to hear you, especially since they say you're trapped in the body. So it's not a floating thing, right? Which kind of makes me think, right? They might have known that there were zombies long before they knew there were zombies. Because let's think about this. Unless some special incantation or special oil was used on said shroud, well, how is the body still remaining, full enough to hop? You know what I'm saying? Like, wouldn't the body rot away and turn into dust and bones, right? But that's not the case with these Pocong, right? And that's what I was asking myself. How is it going to hop? It's decayed. Well, when these rituals take place, like they said, if it was a violent death, one which was not resolved, well, then their soul is trapped. And also, if you bury them the wrong way, you don't follow the ceremony properly, which I don't know how anybody who knows this does it wrong, unless they do it wrong on purpose. And that's what happened with the plastic lady. First things first, folks. Bleeding uncontrollably wouldn't stop even after she was dead. What the fuck was going on? What the fuck was going on, right? That's strange in itself, but that's neither here nor there. They wrapped her in plastic. Now, I have a feeling, and my feeling turned out to be true, that there was something a little bit more to that story than they were telling. So I dug, and I dug, and I dug up in the undisclosed area where they said they buried her body, right? Now you're probably saying, how would you dig up an undisclosed area if it was not disclosed? I have my sources, people. I have my sources. I've done a few things here in Indonesia and made some friends, right? They love my hot sauce. Love it to death. Shango's tears had them in tears of joy when they tasted it. They were like, this is amazing. We love you. What do you want to know? I said, I want to know the undisclosed location of the plastic Pocong. They looked at me, shocked. They said, how do you know? I said, well, it was a story on Wikipedia I found out, and I figured maybe I'd look into it since I'm telling these stories about ghosts from the different places that I've traveled to. He said, well, listen, I can't tell you exactly where it is, but I can tell you where the person is that is related to the person who buried her there. All right, well, that's good fucking shit right there. Let's go. Give me the information and let me move on about my way. He said, one thing. I said, okay, what is this one thing? You must give me the recipe to your Shango's tears. Sure, no problem. I'll give you the recipe. Now, I gave him a recipe. I've made like 7 different variations of Shango's tears, so it's still Shango's tears. It's not the Shango's tears he's eating, but he'll be happy nonetheless. Anyway, he gives me the information. I go seeking this guy in Jakarta, jungle part outside the city. He's hanging out in a hut, chillaxing, smoking on some trees that he picked out of his yard. It didn't look like marijuana. I don't know what it was, but he was smoking it, and it smelled heavenly. I said, hey, let me get some of that. Sat down with him, gave him a bottle of hot sauce. He looked at it, started drinking it. I said, no. Before I had a chance to stop him, I saw his head turn red, sweat pouring from his brow, his mouth salivating profusely. He fell out his chair. Onto the ground he did. Walked over to him. I said, hey, you all right? I know it's delicious, but you don't have to fall out of your chair. It's at that time I noticed his throat had swollen shut. I'm panicking now because I'm like, holy shit, did I just kill this guy with my hot sauce? That'd be fucked up. But then I saw something. Person in the trees run off. I give chase, running through the brush. Trip, fall, bust my face on a root that's growing out of the ground. Caught my cheek. Hey, come back here, son of a bitch. Fuck you. Right? That's what I'm yelling while I'm laying on the ground, mad. Get up, dust myself off, following the direction that I saw this person run into. Come to a clearing in the jungle. It's a little fucking village. A few people. They look at me, I look at them. They look at me again, as if I don't belong. And I don't, because I'm not from here. So, they had a right to look at me like I didn't belong there. So one of the guys walks up that's kind of like standing around loitering and shit and says, hey! Old raspy voice and shit. Even though he wasn't an old guy, he just sounded old, like he probably smoked a pack of cigarettes a minute. Like, dead ass serious. I said, what do you want? Said, listen, some guy I was talking to dropped dead over there about 100, 200 yards and shit. Fucking dropped dead. Throat swole up. And I saw somebody run in this direction. So, I want to know what the fuck's going on. Why did they kill the guy I was trying to talk to, who had the information I needed? Because we can't have anybody knowing the location of the plastic Pocong. How do you know I'm looking for the plastic Pocong? Because there's no other reason you'd be out here in the middle of the fucking jungle and shit talking to the guy that knows where the plastic Pocong is at. Oh, you knew where the plastic Pocong was at? He knew. He doesn't know anything now. And you, listen, before you make threats and say things that you're going to probably regret, you'll probably regret them. I mean, I'm a nice guy. You don't have to threaten to hurt me, or whatever it is that you're about to say. I want to stop you before you say it because I want to say this, okay? I am merely a guy who travels around looking at ghosts. I don't want to do anything crazy to your town. I'm not going to come in here with a whole bunch of cameras and shit, tourists and stuff, and ruin your little secret. I promise you that. I just want to see the plastic Pocong. If the plastic Pocong exists. I got to do my research, figure out what was going on with this whole thing. I think that this particular Pocong, was buried in plastic on purpose so that her soul would roam. So I need to know more about who she is, why this is going on, okay? Guy hits me in the back of the head, I didn't even see. Fall down, I wake up, I'm in a hut. Tied down to a straw chair, I break it because straw chair and it's not that strong. They're looking at me like I'm the strongest guy in the world, and I'm looking at them like it's a straw chair you tied me to, what did you expect? Anyway, we're all at a fucking impasse now because they look like they want to kick my ass, and I do want to kick whoever hit me in the back of the head's ass, and I don't know which one of them did it. So I just smacked the guy that's looking at me with a smile on his face. Why'd you do it? He looks at me in shock like he had nothing to do with it, and he probably didn't, but I don't care. They're all sitting here looking at me while I'm was tied in this straw chair, and I'm not happy about that shit. I want to understand why I'm just asking questions, and I got to be met with such fucking hostility, So I smacked the other dude that's standing next to the dude that I already smacked, and his head smacks into the other guy's head. Now, they're both upset, and they're ready to fight, and I'm ready to fight. I've been ready to fight since they, didn't want to do what I wanted them to do, and I'm upset about it now because it's hot in this fucking jungle. And remember, I tripped, fell, busted my face on a root after talking to a guy that they should have just minded their fucking business. Let me talk to the guy, because in retrospect, they killed him for no reason. They killed him, then they ran to the place they didn't want me to go. Now, wouldn't it have made more sense if you were going to kill the guy, especially with poison, that you're not there, right? Of course, you shouldn't have been there, but you were there because maybe you're a sadistic fuck that wants to watch people die and shit. And you watched them die, and then you ran off in the direction of the place you don't want me to go. You see where that didn't make any sense? And this is what I'm telling these people as I'm thinking about the shit that I'm doing and smacking them in the fucking face. This just could have told me where it was in the first place. Now, bam, I see that I've got their fucking attention now. I see I've got their attention, and I already had their attention when I came in here not supposed to be there, so now I really have their attention, right? Because they see I'm not fucking around. I want to know where the fucking plastic Pocong is, bitches. I want to know now. Now, I know I'm being kind of disrespectful, calling them bitches and shit, but they fucking hit me in the back of the fucking head, and they killed a guy. So who's the bad guy here, right? They are. So fuck them, right? Fuck them. Now, some lady comes out, and she's old as probably dirt. Yeah, probably. Because, I mean, she was wrinkled beyond fucking repair. And she comes over, and I mean, she was bony as shit. I'm surprised. Yo, I swear to God, I'm surprised she could even fucking walk. I'm surprised they didn't carry her ass in. Now, these drapes that she had upon herself looked like robes of some sort. But they weren't robes. And I'm looking, I'm noticing something, right? This chick is wearing one of those shrouds, and it's just drooping off of her. And I noticed something. There's plastic. And the shroud is what I thought brown. But it wasn't brown. It was the color of blood that has been dried and stained for an eon or so. So she walks, floats, glides, whatever you want to call it, over towards me. And I can smell this stench. Ugh. A horrid stench. A stench like no stench I had ever smelled. And it made me gag and throw up right there. And when this old, decrepit looking, smelling of fucking rotting flesh bag of bones stood before me, she looked, her face rotting from the bones, her eyes not even there, just cavities where they should have been. She opened her half rotted mouth, bugs and things crawled out of it, and a screech unlike anything I had ever heard in my life wailed forth from its cavernous skeletal mouth. Oh, the stench of death wafted in my nose, causing me to throw up again all over this thing standing in front of me, which made everybody else around look at me in complete and total disbelief. Disbelief that I threw up on whatever the fuck this thing was standing in front of me. Now, it didn't look like a Pocong because it wasn't wrapped completely. Like the ropes had somehow, I guess, came loose from the feet because, like I said, it walked over, it didn't hop. And the thing I noticed, there was a rope around the neck, but the shrouds were so loose now, it didn't look like a shroud. It looked like it was wearing some type of robes, like I told you. Now, after it breathed this nasty death breath in my fucking face, my eyes could see what it couldn't see before. And I could see the life of the plastic Pocong. She was a young girl, 18, just graduated high school, was loving life, right? You know, loving life. She had a little boyfriend, they were happy, you know. She decided, graduation, things are good, you know, life is about to be a new life for them, you know, things are about to change. She decides, hey, boyfriend, let's celebrate, right? They get a little wine, they're drinking. One thing leads to another. Haha. And she ends up pregnant. But she's not married, folks. And this was not something that her parents were very happy about. Especially the father. This would shame him, his daughter, pregnant out of wedlock with a boy she loved, but the father was not really too fond of their family. You know, they were a little lesser in stature than them. So, when he found out that his daughter was pregnant with this boy's child, he flew into an absolute rage. He beat his daughter savagely. Oh, he beat her bad. Beat her within an inch of her life. Some believe that he punched her in her stomach so many times that he literally liquefied the baby within her womb. Now, mind you, she's near death. Near death. But that's not enough, right? It's not enough. He must now rectify the situation. So, he goes and he finds the boyfriend. Pranks like, everything is good between the two of them, right? He brings him over to the house. Says, come see my daughter, you guys, let's have a talk. I heard about the news. Now, the boy thought everything was cool, Him and his girl weren't trying to hide what had happened from the family. They figured they're both Muslim. It's no big deal, right? They'll eventually get married and everything will be fine. They'll fix it. But the father was hearing none of this shit. His daughter had shamed him, had brought shame to his family. There was only one thing that could be done. She had to be removed. But he knew that because the son, the boy, agreed to take care of the daughter and that this could be rectified, he would hear none of it. So he brought the boy over there and he showed him his battered, bloody, beaten daughter and told him what he did and that child would not live. And the boy lost his mind. He leaned down to the girl and he talked to her one last time. And it is said, there's no truth to this. There's no truth to this. But it is said that she whispered to him for him to take her life because she was suffering and she didn't want to live after having her child beat out of her like this. And she was in bad shape. So he suffocated her to put her out of her misery. And he looked over to the father. Rage filled his eyes. He attacked the father brutally, beat him. The police came. They arrested the young man and blamed him for the murder of the daughter and the assault of the father. And it was said in his court proceedings that he flew into a rage when he found out that she was pregnant and didn't want to get rid of the baby and attacked and killed her, which would explain why her stomach had been beaten so badly. Now, the reason why I believe she was buried in plastic was at the request of her father. Now, the people at the hospital had no idea that she was pregnant by a man that they didn't want the baby to be by, nor did they know that the father had beat her to death. So they were ready to bury her as they would bury anyone in just the shroud. But the father came. Oh, listen, it's a mess. I don't want this shroud damaged. It's part of the family's heirloom. Now, of course, they're not thinking about it because that sounds stupid, but they're figuring, you know what? This guy is grieving. There's no way anybody's been passing down a burial shroud. How would you do that? That's gross. That means you're digging up your own dead, taking their fucking shroud and using it over and over again? Nah. But fuck it. He wants her wrapped in plastic first before he puts her in the shroud. Whatever. Seems like it's not gonna work, but whatever. He's a grieving dad. We're not arguing with him. And they didn't. Then he told them the body must be buried here, where I'm telling you, and don't tell anyone else. Now, one of the guys that went out there to bury the body, found it weird, but he didn't say anything. Not to most people, except for one person, which was some of his family, which is who that guy was that I was trying to talk to that was killed. It was related to that dude, right? He always thought there was something wrong with this shit, especially after, stories of the plastic Pocong started popping up and shit. He started thinking to himself, holy shit, I buried some chick wrapped in plastic. He felt bad about having something to do with said burial. And after telling his relative, he killed himself. Which is weird. But couldn't really find out why he did that. But anyway, folks, yes. The boyfriend didn't kill the girl. The father did it. The father did it. And that is how the plastic Pocong came to be. Now, I want to thank you all for joining me for today's episode of Ghost Stories from the World with Omen. The next story, which I will probably tell sometime today so we can move on to our next location, is the last most popular ghost from Indonesia. And you're going to have to tune in later to find out what that ghost is. In the meantime, be careful when walking through graveyards or cemeteries in Indonesia, especially near Jakarta. There are many Pocong hopping about, and some of them are extremely vengeful. Others are just seeking resolve to their eternal problem. And if you are burying your loved ones and you want them to pass on, then you make sure you follow the goddamn rituals properly, or you will condemn your loved ones to an eternity of hopping around in a shroud, probably just trying to get the fuck out this shit so they can tell you, hey, you fucked up the fucking ritual and I can't pass on. And then you got me tied up in this goddamn burlap sack and shit. Can't use my arms to scratch my ass. I've had a fucking itch back there for the past 500 years. Untie this goddamn shroud and let me scratch my fucking eternal ass. I want to thank you for joining me. If you like the story, well, fucking click on the goddamn like. And if you haven't subscribed yet, then subscribe! And if you want to be notified whenever I drop a story or anything like that, then go ahead and hit the notification icon and it will notify you when that happens. Until next time, folks, take care of yourself.